You don't listen, do you?
Anybody not wearing 2 million sunblock is gonna have a real bad day, get it?
Today, we are proud to unveil a unified theory of the Hollywood movie universe.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Rupert Pupkin.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Where casting decisions and movie universes are the real world. We promise you this is not some tinfoil hat, the earth is flat, and the chemtrails have fluoride in them theory. This is the real deal. This is hands on the Bible truth, the nothing but the truth. And the truth is, the Joker is John Connor's father. Let's start at the end, and then work our way back through a few twists and turns all the way back to the very beginning.
He still loves me, don't you, baby?
After the first Terminator, in the mid-1980s, Sarah Connor ends up in an asylum, diagnosed by some bad doctors with acute schizoaffective disorder and separated from her son, John. This kid was supposedly conceived by Kyle Reese. But we haven't seen a paternity test, so... You know who else was in an asylum in the 1980s? That's right, Arthur Fleck, also known as the Joker. He gets institutionalized after leading a class uprising in Gotham City. If you look at the walls of the asylum he's in, they look exactly like the ones in Terminator 2, when Sarah Connor is running away from the reprogrammed T-800. You might be thinking, don't all movie asylums look alike? Isn't one of these movies set in Gotham, DC's version of New York, and the other in LA? Just bottle these thoughts up for a second, okay? This theory works by associative links that make up the modern Hollywood movieverse, not through the boring constructs that we use to perceive the real world, like space and time. So yes, New York and LA are far apart geographically, but they're both big American cities. As far as settings for movies go, tomato tomato. This is some high-level intellectual stuff that only Rick and Morty fans would really get, and we don't want you feeling left behind. So let's recap what we have so far. Arthur Fleck and Sarah Connor are both committed to the same movie asylum for going against the system, and trying to warn people of what's brewing right under their noses. Got it? Once they're both inside the asylum, they bond with one another. They each realize it's not their fault that they've been put in there. They haven't failed the world just isn't ready for their vision of it. Whether that be a working class uprising or defense against AI.
All I have are negative thoughts.
I could have visitors.
They realize that they're kindred spirits and quickly fall in love and conceive a child. This child is John Connor. Whether you like it or not, you inherit a lot from your parents. Your eyes, your nose, your big dimples when you smile, your slicked back greasy hair, your penchant for anarchy in the face of institutionalized violence operated by the state apparatus. Wait, hold on. Sarah Connor and her son John have already illustrated within their own movie franchise that a penchant for revolutionary action can be passed down between generations. Phoenix's Joker is also revolutionary, but instead of rising up against the robots of the distant future, he leads a rebellion against Gotham's upper class. Connor's future revolt against Skynet is simply the completion of a self-fulfilling prophecy that was birthed by the coupling of Arthur Fleck and Sarah Connor. But what about Joker's lineage, you ask? In Joker, he finds out that his mom, Penny, is not actually his biological mother. After digging around in the archives and stealing a file from Paperboy, he discovers that Penny adopted him way back when. So who are the parents that left him behind? To anyone who's seen The Shining, the answer is obvious. It's Jack and Wendy. After a horrible winter at the Overlook Hotel,
Remember what Mr. Halloran said.
where her son goes crazy and her husband freezes to death, she wants to wash her hands of the whole thing and start fresh. So instead of raising a possessed child who wants red rum all the time, she puts Danny up for adoption in Gotham City, and skips town, never to be heard from again. Now Danny is stuck in an orphanage waiting to be adopted. But unfortunately, all this is cut short when he's adopted by an unstable employee of Wayne Enterprises named Penny Fleck. If you've seen Joker, you're already well aware of Danny/Arthur's nightmare childhood at the hands of Penny Fleck. Even though it makes sense that Arthur would be troubled after such an upbringing,
I don't know.
we don't get a deep dive into it as much as we'd like. Thankfully, Ewan McGregor has got us covered. You know the theory that's been kicking around about how Arthur Fleck actually imagined everything that happened in the Joker? We even have a video on it. We're here to tell you that all that 11/11 frozen clock talk is bogus. If you want to know what Arthur Fleck really imagined, there's a whole other movie about this called Dr. Sleep. Ewan McGregor plays the old Danny who revisits his childhood trauma, hoping to come to terms with that awful formative winter. But all that is just wishful thinking on the part of Arthur Fleck. But he did fantasize an alternative life path for himself. If only Arthur had been able to move to the Sunshine State with his mom, Midnight Cowboy style, and obsess about room 237 while he sat on a beach in the shade of a palm tree. But unfortunately, his childhood was more like another Ewan McGregor movie, Trainspotting.
With God's help, I'll conquer this terrible affliction.
Arthur fell in with the wrong crowd and got into the wrong things. And next thing you know, he's going through an intense withdrawal in his childhood bedroom, emerging as a shell of the young man that he once was, forced by his anxious phobias to continue living in the relative comfort of his mother's home. In other words, he was destined to be the Joker. Not only because of his traumatic upbringing in the big city, but also because of his biological dad.
I want you to have a good time.
Some people have big shoes to fill. There's the Skarsgård family, Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, and their dad Martin, Nicolas Cage and his uncle and then his daughter, Jaden and Willow and their parents Jada and Will, the Prime Minister of Canada, and of course Jeb Please Clap Bush and his presidential father and brother. The biggest shoes of all, though, belong to Arthur's biological father. Although he froze to death at the end of The Shining, he still exists as a withered ghost, cursing courtside at Lakers games. And while he was still alive, he had a brief stint as the Joker.
Daddy's going to make some art, darling.
Arthur Fleck didn't just become the Joker because of his abusive, delusional mother,
I don't want you to worry about money, Mom.
or the lifelong strain of living in an unforgiving society. Being the clown prince of crime was always in his genes. So, now back to the next generation, John Connor.
This is John Connor. If you're listening to this, you are the Resistance.
A lot of the movies have become a convoluted mess of time travel, alternate dimensions, and predestination paradoxes. John Connor is patient zero for this phenomena. In fact, he may have even created it, so he deserves every ounce of the treatment he's getting in this video. He has been played by 5 different actors over the course of his life in film. First as a kid in 1991 by Ed Furlong. Then, in 2009, Christian Bale plays him as a man, the leader of an anti-machine resistance in the year 2018.
How many survivors are on site? Over.
1.
Copy.
But, in a movie made in 2019, a scene set in the 90s sees a CGI reconstruction version of Furlong getting killed on a beach. And before he's even born, his mother learns of his future, by way of a time-traveling humanoid robot.
If we stay the course, we are dead!
This is chronological linguini. We won't even try to explain it. Let's instead focus on the fact that Christian Bale, who played John Connor, also played Batman. How's that for a multiverse? John Connor, the son of the Joker, ends up becoming Batman and fighting a version of his dad. Talk about daddy issues.
Danny boy!
But what about John and his mom? Well, the last time they were together was when John got killed in 1991. But he's still alive in 2018? And his mom is still alive in a movie released in 2019? This sheds some light on a dream vision that Sarah had back in Terminator 2. She's looking at a playground, but she can't actually get to it, because there's a chain link fence in the way. There's no word on why she doesn't just climb over it. She sees all of these kids playing, and also a 1950s housewife version of herself, and then, all of a sudden, a nuclear bomb explodes, and everyone's flesh gets burnt off. That's a bad stress dream. Imagine the responsibility of having a baby, and then turn that up to 11 because your kid has been confirmed as humanity's last hope 20 years down the line. The dream is also a warning about history and how it repeats itself. Terminator 2 came out in 1991, and back then, movies hadn't reached the convoluted heights they had today, where time travel and the existence of parallel universes is no longer outrageous. They're just quick fixes for merging storylines and extending franchises. Also, don't even ask what happened to Ed Norton as the Hulk. If you've watched Terminator Dark Fate, you'll know that Sarah's nightmare has come true. The movie is built around the skeleton of old Terminator movies, and any other plot points are just opportunities for callbacks to classic lines.
I'll be back.
It even includes a new, more hopeful version of Sarah's playground nightmare from T2. Okay, back to the family tree, which is starting to take shape. Let's break down quickly what we have so far. There's the son, John Connor. His parents are Sarah Connor and Arthur Fleck, the Joker. His dad is Jack Nicholson, also the Joker and Wendy, aka Shelley Duvall. But where does Sarah Connor come from? Her parents are only briefly mentioned in the whole Terminator franchise. They're supposedly killed by Terminators that were intending to kill her in the first place. But who could have they been? As we've seen already, genetic inheritance works between different movies, so maybe we should trace backwards to find the root of one of Sarah's traits to find out where she came from. In Terminator 2, she's in an asylum because of what everyone else sees as her insane predictions about the future, which do end up coming true. Her visions and fears are related to things that she knows and that other people don't understand, to pressures that are created by the world around. She's not actually crazy. people just think she is, so she's thrown in the asylum. She carries the burden of knowing the unfortunate fate of the next generation and also carries a prophesized child. Sound familiar? There's another famous mom who carries a child that messes with her visions of the future and present. And the timeline fits too. The Joker is John Connor's dad, yes, but more importantly, Sarah Connor is Rosemary's baby.
No! It can't be! No!
Simple, right? Let us know if you have any questions about our airtight new theory of movies in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Screen Rant for more factual content.